about just of what she's about. She uses her poetry as a means of tackling issues of feminism and, on a more personal level, her Caribbean American identity. She joins us now to talk about her work and her first visit to South Africa. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I think a good place to start would be that poem you just shared with us, which you've just shared with me, the title, To a West Indian Woman with a Blade. Just
Yes.
speak to that, if you will.
Well, I'm working on a series of dramatic monologues. They're basically persona poems from a West Indian woman's perspective. And it's not just one woman, it's several women. So each poem is sort of like a woman talking to herself or talking to a friend about a different issue. So this issue in particular deals with suicide. And this is a friend trying to convince her friend Wilma not to commit suicide. So it's a question of what we struggle with as human beings and what comes out on the other side of these struggles as long as we press on and get through it.
It's so interesting how many poets write about struggle and certainly about identity. What is it about your identity that makes you write and talk about it?
Well, it's interesting because I immigrated to Trinidad when I was 8, and I moved to a white suburban community. So
you immigrated from where?
Trinidad and Tobago.
To the States?
To the United States.
Right.
So identity has always been an issue for me because, you take a plane and overnight you have an accent. Overnight you're different. Overnight you're exotic. You're all of these things. So we're defined through difference. So I don't know that I'm short until I stand up next to Michael Jordan.
Right.
I don't know that I'm brown until I stand up next to someone who's white.
Well, I mean, just listening to your accent, having just met you, I imagine people query that a lot of the time. Well, I can't really place you, a bit American there, but I'm not really sure.
Right.
How do you deal with that kind of stuff?
I tell them exactly where I'm from. I say I'm from Trinidad, but I've lived in the United States. And as a result, there's this sort of hybrid accent. And, it's something that, when you're negotiating through all these spaces, through all these different geographies, you're able to adjust and you can switch back and forth. And that's the beauty of it. And a lot of my poems really deal with that. And those West Indian poems I just mentioned, it's an attempt for me to connect with my island through language, because that is how we speak.
Samantha, you've likened your trip across the Atlantic to our shores as being a bit like on a slave ship. Just speak to that perspective and that experience, if you will.
Well, I will say it's nothing like a slave ship in that, we were catered to all the time. Whatever you wanted to drink, whatever you wanted to eat, pillow, blanket, air condition. It was a long journey. I think it was the longest plane flight I've been on. So in that sense, it was brutal for me. But I thought about, I was looking down at the ocean, and I was like, wow, our ancestors traveled the same ocean in such horrible, inhumane conditions. So I thought about that for quite a bit of the journey, that, the fact that I'm able to travel this way, it speaks to our struggle and all that we've been through.
Interesting also arriving in a country like South Africa, a strange place, if you will, for the first time. What was that like, and how has your short stay already changed your view of the world?
Wow. Well, I will say that driving through the streets of Johannesburg is not so unlike driving through the streets of the Midwest, in terms of the technology, the buildings, the cars. A lot of it is the same, in that sense. What really has left a big imprint on me is the people. There's such a hospitality, there's such a reverence, there's a respect there that I find very endearing. And that has changed me in a large way, because it's coming in contact with people, and people are willing to share what they know and share what they feel about Johannesburg, and that sort of hospitality I think is rare. It is.
Well, I'm just enjoying sitting here and just listening to you. Before I say goodbye, let's just tell us a bit about the poem you'll be performing before we say goodbye on the show.
Well, the poem is